You're listening to POV, the Portland Ovations podcast. I'm Galen Koch. It's been a difficult year for artists, performers, and makers in Maine. Even that word difficult seems insufficient to describe the effects of the pandemic on Maine's creative community. The coronavirus forced venues to shut down and made our beloved gatherings unsafe. For Portland Ovations, the disappearance of in-person, live events struck at the heart of the organization's mission for community well-being. And so, like many businesses and organizations this year, Ovations continues to pivot and is now refocusing funding to support Maine artists and the creation of new and original work. Ovations' new commissioning project supports 5 performing artists living and creating in Maine, and also includes a partnership with the Abbey Museum to create a performance of Wabanaki stories for young audiences in school and family settings. Over the course of this season and into next, audiences are invited into the creative process of 5 Maine artists. Through virtual conversations and seeing works in progress, audiences gain up-close, behind-the-scenes, candid insight into the real work of creating new performance. By commissioning the creation of these performing arts experiences and sharing those works through its in-person and virtual communities, Portland Ovations not only brings the world to Maine, but brings Maine artists to the world. In this episode, we meet one of Ovations' 5 commissioned artists, Riley Watts. Riley Watts is a dance artist based in Portland, Maine. Growing up in Bangor, Riley describes himself as a kid who had an endless curiosity about the world. He began dancing at the Thomas School of Dance in Bangor, and at 16, Riley left Maine to attend the Walnut Hill School for the Arts, and then Juilliard School of Dance. Upon graduating from Juilliard, Riley moved to Europe and lived in Switzerland, Holland, and Germany. He performed all over the world and danced professionally with Cedar Lake Contemporary Ballet, Bern Ballet, Netherlands Dance Theatre 2, and the Forsyth Company. At the age of 30, 14 years after leaving the state, Riley returned to Maine as a freelance dance artist and settled in Portland. He continues to tour internationally and also creates his own work.
And I've always been the type of artist, although I am a dancer first, I call myself a dance artist, I've always been interested and active with other forms than just dance itself.
I spoke with Riley virtually about his experience living through 2020 and what has inspired his current new works for Portland Ovations commissioning project.
So when the pandemic started, I was kind of in the middle of an artist residency in Rockland at the Ellis Beauregard Foundation. I was there to make, artwork and dance performances of different kinds, and then the pandemic hit and I sort of couldn't do anything public. And then also the residency sort of shut down, but I had left my apartment in Portland to move up there for this residency over 6 months. And so I didn't have any place to live. So I ended up staying at the residency for a little bit longer. So then eventually I did move back to Portland, to South Portland. And 2020 was pretty strange and exceptional in a lot of ways. I lost all of my touring. I for the most part, have made my income from international touring. And of course, I couldn't do that. And so what I did was I chose to take a job at Snug Harbor Farm as a landscaper in Kennebunk. And it was amazing. All things considered, it was a really terrible year in a lot of ways, but it gave me an opportunity to try something new, which I hadn't done before. I was working outside. I was being physical still. I was meeting new people that I wouldn't met otherwise. I was learning about how things grow and cycles that are greater than me, and some garden design ideas, which were all super compelling. And so I'm really grateful that I had that opportunity. It did mean, though, that I left dance behind for a while, for, almost the whole year. I almost didn't think about it at all in 2020 because I just didn't have time. That finished late this fall, or late fall of 2020, and then the Ovations Commission came in, and so I had the winter to start slowly kind of thinking about, okay, right, I am an artist. That is what I do. What do I want to do for this project? last year at the Ellis Beauregard Foundation, I was spending a lot of time recording myself and then on video, and then putting the videos into editing software and kind of making a dance on my screen, and almost like I think of it almost like a video painting in some way, like a choreographic video painting. I also make music for that, and I really enjoy doing it. It's become a real choreographic practice, and so I imagine that this commission is going to include something like that. I knew that I wanted to have some kind of live component eventually to it, meaning like something in a live performative setting. Where I am right now is I'm starting to work with a dear friend of mine, also a choreographer in Portland named Heather Stewart, and we connected recently with some kind of difficult subjects to talk about, but ones that we both feel are very present and real for us in our personal lives and also artistically. I've discovered recently that I've been diagnosed with bipolar disorder after years and years of very intense highs and very intense creative, productive periods, as well as really debilitating lows and very oppressive depression in and out of my career, probably for 20 years. She and I have always spoken very openly and frankly about mental health. And I'm very grateful for that, to have a friend like Heather. And then also she has a story of her own where her longtime collaborator, Mark Bardisol, aka Dull, he was a electronic composer and sound designer in Montreal. They made all the work together performance-wise, and he unfortunately took his own life about a year and a half ago. And so she's just able to start working again recently, and so we reconnected in the studio just to be like, hey, like, do you want to get in the studio again? Like, let's do it safely, of course, all masked up, but like, it's been such a long time since we've been able to get into a dance context that let's just get in the studio and see how we feel. And so she brought in this piece of music, which was the last mix of music that he made for her before he died. We're planning to make a dance work to this music and dedicate it to him. It's where I am, it's where she is, and we now have the opportunity to get together, reconnect after the year of isolation, and then see where this goes. The first day that we worked together, I walked into the room and we started to work a little bit, and I just kind of like broke down, and I was like, I just feel terrible. I've really been struggling to get myself out of this cave. And she was like, I totally get it. I totally understand. We talked a little bit about it. She talked a little bit about her, from her perspective, where she is. And by the end of the week, it was like some weight had started to be lifted off of certainly myself, I think both of us. I've always been interested in what artists think about when they're making and the states of mind that they go through when they create what they create. Because I'm an improviser, I've thought a lot about and crafted a lot of my work about choreography as a state of mind, and thinking of dancing as an activity to unfold your subconscious. I think there's something about thinking and acting that have this reflexive relationship, that when you're moving your mind, you're also moving your body, and vice versa. And so the things that you do affect what you perceive, and the things that you perceive affect what you do. And then also having this, recent sort of understanding of my own diagnosis of bipolar, shines a real clear light on like, oh, that's what you've been doing. Like, you've been trying to understand this really difficult mental states that you go through your work, you know? That's why sometimes when you're performing, it feels like you lose touch. You know, it's almost like it's sometimes, if I can be totally honest, sometimes performing has felt like touching madness in some way. You know, I'll go on tour and I'll have this incredible experience or this really deep, you know, creative process. And then I'll come home and just absolutely crash for weeks. You know, I can't get out of bed. It feels like my body is slowing down and filled with lead. And so that's always been a part of sort of my, like, at the heart of my work. Heather has her story, and it's particularly related to Mark and to this music. And so to be in a creative zone with her, with this music, which was created by somebody who was in pain, and also brilliant, and very much channeled something from beyond, you know, and sometimes that's how it feels when you're making work. It feels like there's something traveling through you that's not necessarily something you're controlling, but it's just, you don't know where it's coming from. And that's kind of what I mean by art making and dancing can feel like unfolding the subconscious, you know? It's like you don't necessarily know what you're doing, but you are doing. And then when you have enough time to look back at it, or when you show it to somebody else and they sort of tell you what they're thinking, sometimes it becomes clear like what the work is actually about. Even a couple of weeks ago, I didn't really know what I was going to talk about for this. I didn't know what I was going to do for this project, and I was kind of stressed about it. And then since I've been able to see my own mental states more clearly through this project, you know, in a lot of ways, suddenly it's like, oh, I can't talk about my work without talking about mental health. It's like a really critical piece of the puzzle that is only evident to me now. And what a gift that Ovations is giving me this opportunity to, in some part, figure this out and work on it and make work in dialogue with this. Also knowing that because it's a performing art, maybe this can be a helpful piece of the conversation for other people who might be struggling with a similar thing. I hope that this creation for myself and for Heather, I hope that it's helpful for people beyond just the two of us. One of the really magical things about art making and performances is that it speaks to something ineffable, a living performative circumstance that hopefully we will be creating, you know, in Portland. It gets to something about the human experience that is deeper than the surface level of what something is defined as or identified as or even perceives to be. And that to me is when the work can be really great. There have been moments on stage when I have these like almost transcendent experiences where, you know, I'm on stage and all of my body and all of my mind, my consciousness is living in front of thousands of people. And sometimes I'm improvising, and sometimes I'm doing these dances that are personal to me or with somebody that's very personal to me. And just that phenomena alone, you know, that you can't dance without involving your whole self in a way that's sort of intensified by being observed by all of these people sitting in the audience. And just, I mean, that's always blown my mind. I've never really been able to get past that. It's so fascinating, you know, that like this phenomena of performance that, you know, these people are collected into the theater and are sitting there all facing the same direction, sitting in the dark, in silence, watching this person dance for an hour or whatever on stage. And then there's that sort of relationship between, you know, feeling your inner self, your inner world, the sense of your personal consciousness, and then this sort of like relationship of that to the external world where you as an artist are facilitating the theater to change in feeling. You know, like I'm sure if you've gone to see performing arts, you know, how excited the room can feel when there's a really great show, or when there's like this gut-wrenching moment on stage. And then it's something that's very felt, it's not just a visual thing. Dancing is not just about shapes. It's about life. It's about consciousness. It's about observing somebody live for that particular time of their life in front of you on this stage.
Music for this episode was composed by Mark Bardasol and by Blue Dot Sessions. Special thanks to Riley Watts and Heather Stewart. If you are in crisis, you can call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at 1-800-273-8255. Thank you for listening to POV from Portland Ovations. This episode was produced by me, Galen Koch. Stay tuned for more episodes from the Maine-based performing artists in Ovations Commissioning Project, playwright and sexual trafficking survivor advocate Dee Clark, musician Samuel James, and artistic collaborators, writer Karem Durdag and musician Andy Happel. The new works created over the first 6 months of 2021 will be seen in work-in-progress presentations every Tuesday at 4 p.m., beginning April 27th through May 25th. And then presented live as part of Ovations 2021 to 2022 and 2022 to 2023 seasons. Premieres will include staged readings, storytelling presentations, concerts, and immersive experiences. And of course, you can tune in and hear about those projects here on POV. Ovations POV is produced in part with generous support from a major project grant from the Maine Humanities Council, which receives funding from the National Endowment for the Humanities.